Guys, it is Gray Italo back again with you after a several year break here to podcast with you and cover some mixed martial arts action coming up on Saturday night with UFC 277 Pena versus Nunez 2. This is going down July 30th at the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. Card that I'm really looking forward to. And I wouldn't say it's a sleeper card, but there's been some events that have had a bit more buzz leading up to it, when you compare it to this one. But both the prelims and the main card contain some very compelling matchups, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about those starting off with the prelims. So just to run down, this is not the early prelims card, but rather the prelims that are going to lead us into the main card. And again, to run that down very quickly, and then we'll kind of dissect them one by one. We've got 4 fights. Lightweight division, Drakkar Klose versus Rafa Garcia. Heavyweight division, Dontel Mize versus Hamdi Abdelwahab. We've got lightweight division again with Drew Dober versus Rafael Alves. And then to top it off, last fight on the prelim card before the main card kicks off, welterweight division, 2 well-rounded heavy hitters with Alex Morono versus Matthew Semelsberger. Absolute banger of a matchup. I cannot wait for that. But let's rewind a couple fights and start with Drakkar Klose versus Rafa Garcia. So Drakkar, coming off a win in his most recent outing, he was out for a couple years, had some whiplash symptoms he was dealing with from a shove at the weigh-ins a couple years ago. I believe year and a half to 2 years ago, but came back, had a good win against Brandon Jenkins at the UFC on ESPN 34 card, Luque versus Muhammad 2. Got a TKO stoppage over Brandon Jenkins, and he'll be going up against Rafa Garcia. Also coming off of a win, but really a 2-fight win streak if you rewind back to 2021, where he topped Natan Levy by decision. And then most recently, he was also on that Luque versus Muhammad 2 card in April, and got a submission stoppage win over Jesse Ronson. So both men, their most recent outings had stoppage victories, so a lot of momentum, a lot on the line. When you're trying to build up a win streak in the lightweight division, it's so incredibly difficult, right? Because it's just a shark tank of a division. So very much looking forward to this fight. Both men very well-rounded. Drakkar likes to stand on the feet. Looks to be more of a striking-centric approach for him in his most recent game plans, but Rafa Garcia, very willing to go to the ground, very willing to stand up as well. So I'll be curious to see where the fight goes, especially in the early rounds. And once that concludes, we're going to move on to the big guys. So we're going to be in the heavyweight division with Dontel Mize versus Hamdi Abdelwahab. So 2 men that are not as well known as the previous lightweights I just touched on, but kind of coming up, Mize, he's not had as much action as somebody like Drakkar Klose or Rafa Garcia in the lightweight division, but nonetheless, 2-fight win streak. Got a decision over Rocky Martinez in 2020, and then at the Lewis vs. Dawkins event, a TKO stoppage over Josh Parisian. So kind of a standout name there. It was a good win for him to get as he starts to hopefully get more activity and more wins under his belt. He's only at 9 wins and 4 losses right now. I say only because heavyweight division is deep with a lot of veterans right now. And he'll be going up against somebody else looking to make a name for himself in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. We've got Hamdi Abdelwahab, the Hammer, out of Queens, New York. Undefeated. This guy's not lost. All of his wins have come by TKO, and most recently a knockout punch at the Icon Fighting Championship in Florida over Matt Strickland in June of this year. So quick turnaround for him, and he's going to have a stiff test. He's going up against somebody that has fought in the UFC. Let's see here. Let's take a look. Mize has fought... Okay, so yeah, right. Mize came off the Contender Series in 2019. Lost his first 2 matches in the UFC. 2019 lost by submission. 2020 lost by submission, but then turned the ship around. And again, like I said, has that 2-fight win streak he's riding. So kind of looking to see if either men can kind of break out there and really, show what they're made of in the heavyweight division. Decision win, certainly better than a loss, but with so many stoppage victories, to make a name for yourself and try to get into contendership, you almost need to, have a really significant stoppage win. So we'll see what, either man can do there come Saturday night. And moving forward, this is one I'm personally really invested in. I'm a fan of Drew Dober, UFC veteran, MMA veteran, been around a long time, although he's still fairly young at 33. 24 wins, 11 losses, and in his most recent outing, took out Terrence McKinney. Wild fight at the Santos versus Ankalaev fight in March of this year. Had knees, punches to finish McKinney. And Terrence McKinney's somebody coming in that they were thinking, this could be one of the next guys that's really, bringing fireworks every time, making a name for himself, kind of stating to the lightweight division that he's here to rise to contendership status very quickly. But Drew Dober had other plans. Dober rocked heavily early in that fight and then really turned the tide, kept his wits about him and showed that veteran poise, and scored what was a really impressive TKO. And he'll be going up against Rafael Alves, the turn. 20 wins, 10 losses. You got two crafty veterans going up against each other. And whenever that happens, it's fun, right? I mean, we like to see guys that have been around, been there, done that, and who can get the edge over the other one with a superior game plan, especially if you have a striker versus grappler matchup. But in the lightweight division, it makes it even that much more exciting to me. And with Alves here, also coming off of a recent win, winter of 2021, November rather, at that Holloway versus Rodriguez card, UFC Fight Night 197, had a submission win over Mark Jacasey. And to get a submission win over Jacasey, some guys write Jacasey off as a striker, but as we saw in, last week rather, Jacasey, good wrestling. I mean, he can stifle guys really for 3 rounds, no problem with that gas tank. So for him to get a submission win over Jacasey just goes to show how good Alves is on the ground. So with, Dober and that kickboxing Muay Thai background, Alves kind of preferring to go to the ground, should be a very interesting matchup, and I've got my eye on that. As if it wasn't already exciting enough to have a matchup, like that, and you think that could be one that could, round out the prelim card, get everybody pumped up for the main card. It gets even better with Alex the Great White Morono at 21-7, going up against a really serious rising contender, in my opinion, at 10-3. Matthew Semi the Jedi Semelsberger out of Frederick, Maryland, just a few miles from where I'm at right now. And man, when I think about how this fight could go down, I just don't know what to think. And that's part of, I think, what makes it so exciting for me. I'm so looking forward to this one. Both men very hard hitting, and in particular Semelsberger. We've seen the power that he's put on display in his time in the UFC. He only joined the UFC in 2020. So in 2 really short years, he's had a number of outings, only 1 loss in the UFC, and that was at that Korean Zombie versus Ige fight against Kalen Williams. Decision loss, close fight, but other than that, let's run down his wins in the UFC. You can kind of see why I'm so high on Semelsberger, but in his UFC debut, August 2020, Carlton Minus got a decision over him, very decisive decision. There was really no doubt in my mind who won that fight when it went to the judges, and then followed that up with a knockout punch win over Jason Witt. That was, part of where he started to really put his power on display on the big stage. Had that close decision loss in June of 2021, but then, turned around quickly, came back in September of 2021 at the Volkanovsky versus Ortega fight, got another knockout win over Martin Sano. March 2022, let's fast forward to this year, just a couple months ago at that Santos versus Ankalaev fight, decision over AJ Fletcher. It was a fight where he had his power on display for sure, but he really kind of had to earn that one. Fletcher was just not giving up an inch, and Semelsberger started to look like somebody that was even more comfortable out there inside the octagon and was able to navigate a very difficult, challenging fight against an opponent like Fletcher and show that he's got the poise and the wrestling ability to go the distance and still get, a really kind of no doubt decision there. But all that aside, Alex Morono is somebody that goes in there and ruins everybody's, night. They can come in and say that I'm going to take out Morono. I'm going to stand and trade with him, or I'm going to go to the ground with him and get a submission win. But Morono is the definition of well-rounded, and it is so difficult to get a hand up on the guy. Again, wherever it goes, you're in the clinch, you're in the center of the octagon, fight hits the mat. Morono's just somebody that's a problem everywhere, and as his most recent victims can attest in Gall, Zawada, and none other than the recently retired Cowboy Cerrone, is just difficult to deal with. And his most recent fights, those three that I just mentioned, you've got TK over Cerrone, decision over Zawada, and then decision over Gall. But the decisions were strong. There's really no doubt. And then obviously with the Cerrone win, he went out there and just looked so comfortable, fluid, quick, and composed on his feet that you knew that as the competition got more stiff for him, there's probably no doubt that he was going to unfold an even more well-rounded game plan each time out, because he's a coach on his own as well. So not only is he fighting, but he's coaching other fighters, he's setting up game plans for them. He's constantly not only a student of game, but a coach as well. So he's somebody that shows each time he enters the octagon, he's got a mind for the sport. Semelsberger as well, a very just well-rounded fighter, but less experience than Morono, so it's going to be a question of, can he overcome the veteran craftiness of Morono with power, speed, agility, a bit of youth in there, and I don't know. I really just can't make a pick here. If I had to tell you right now, and you flipped a coin and told me, I've got to pick, I'm going to go with Morono, just because I think of him having the edge on the ground. I think the striking may cancel itself out, and this might hit the mat, and that's where Morono may shine. But if I'm being honest, I'm pulling for Semelsberger. There's something about that guy that I think is so exciting in this division at welterweight, and I could see him gradually rising up the ranks at 170 to really make a run at the title if he continues with the momentum that he has right now. So I don't know. I like both guys. I always get excited to watch each. And I'm going to have my eye on this one for sure. But before we touch on the main card of UFC 277, I'd like to take a brief moment to plug one of my companies and tell you how you can kind of support the podcast if you're enjoying the preview of this card, other episodes to come. And that is by heading over to gearheadbeard.com. So Gearhead Beard Brand is a newly launched company of mine, and completely owned and operated and manufactured here in the US. There are a lot of beard oil companies on the market today. If you go to Etsy or really just Google any beard oil company, are you going to come across hundreds if not thousands, and it can be very difficult to tell where they're based and where the ingredients were blended. But I set out with a mission of providing handcrafted, high quality, small batch beard oil blends that are made right here again in the US, with well packaged, careful shipping. So you're going to get a high quality product at a very decent, fair price. Try to keep shipping as low as possible, and everything is packaged very carefully in discreet boxes to keep prying eyes away from your beard oil. So just to touch on the 4 blends quickly, got an unscented blend for everybody that doesn't need an aroma. They just want an everyday, out and about, handling your business beard blend that you can just put on and set and forget, right? Also have 3 other scented blends, some a little stronger than others, but if you want to check those out, get a full write-up and description on what could match your needs and wants with your beard, head over again to www.gearheadbeard.com. That's GEARHEAD beard.com. So again, beard oil is manufactured and blended right here in the States, and I would greatly appreciate your support in business. And I'll make sure to remind you guys on the next episode too, I'm sure. So again, if you've got somebody in your life or yourself as a beard, again, it's none other than gearheadbeard.com. So with that being said, let's launch into the main card of UFC 277. I don't know if it gets better than this for me in terms of kicking off a card, but Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. Big Anthony Smith fan here. The light heavyweight division is my favorite division of all time. 205 pounds is just where it's at for me for power, just dynamic fights in terms of grappling ability, how the fights play out on the feet, the clinch work. Everything comes together for me in the light heavyweight division. It's not to say that I don't enjoy, the welterweight and lightweight and heavyweight fights that we talked about for the prelim cards. Certainly, I'm a fan of MMA. Wherever the fight's taking place, 125 pounds, 265 pounds, I'm in, right? But if I had to pick a division, it's light heavyweight. And big time, title implications here. We've got Magomed Ankalaev coming out of, that Dagestan world where they just don't lose fights. And, for him, he's only got one loss on his record, 16 wins. Just racked up an absolute gang of victories. It's been a murderer's row for him. And not only has he had impressive decision victories, but the stoppages. It's not like he's armbarring somebody and they, tap in the first round. I got somebody right. Pretty violent, knockouts, right? He's got 2 over Long Kutalaba, and I know one of them, is kind of fiddly, right? But before that, Dalcha Lungiambula, front kick and a punch there in the 3rd round. Most recently, 3 strong decisions over Krylov, Ozdemir, and Santos. These are, serious guys at 205 that he's getting over on and doing it very impressively, dare I say easily, right? So going up against Anthony Smith, he's going to have to bring his A game. Lionheart, right? 36 wins, 16 losses. Been there, done that. And he's one of these guys I think that is a good example of at the heavier weights, kind of like a fine wine, right? With time, these guys age into better fighters in a way that we might not be seeing at, let's say, like 145 pounds, right? Or 155 pounds. And so don't let the record and the time that he's spent, in the sport and the mileage he has kind of fool you when you're looking at this matchup. 3-fight win streak for Smith. Submission over Devin Clark, November 2020. TKO doctor stoppage over Crute, April of 2021. Most recently, September of 2021, Ryan Spann submission, rear naked choke. All in the first round. All 3 of those were in the first round. So he's not getting in there and grinding out these kind of, I'm not quite sure about that decisions. He's going in there and making statements. And that comes after having a really, really difficult back-to-back stretch there with the Teixeira and Rakic fights in 2020. So not only is he showing that he's still got it, but he's got it in spades. And I'm very, very excited for this fight because, again, there are serious title contendership implications here at 205. And the light heavyweight division has always been exciting in terms of who's at the top, but I think right now it's kind of, at that somewhat wide open phase because of the fact that we're not quite sure if Teixeira is going to get that rematch. He recently lost the belt, so does that happen? Who does he fight if he doesn't get the rematch for the title? So I think if one of these 2 men has a very, significant case to make with this impressive stoppage victory on Saturday night, we could see an interesting matchup potentially with Teixeira maybe a few months from now. But time will tell. Great fight to kick off the main card. And then following that up, it is going to be a tough task to do, but we've got Alexander Pantoja, the cannibal. 24 wins, 5 losses. Most recently, with wins over Manel Kopp and Brandon Royval, both of those in 2021. So first fight of the year for Pantoja, and then he's going to be going up against Alex Perez. And Perez said this week, from what I read, he was tired of sitting around trying to get a fight. He had fights scheduled that kind of fell through, decided to take this fight because he just wanted to get back in there, get some action, which is understandable. We hear that from, a significant number of fighters when they're trying to get fights. People get injured, right? They're sitting on the sidelines. Ring rust, it's a debate whether it's real or not, but at least for Perez, they said he wanted to get back in there. Pantoja was available, and then boom, we've got the second fight of the main card of the night here. So again, Pantoja 2-fight win streak with Perez coming off of a loss to Davison Figueiredo. So really, no shame in that. A submission loss by guillotine choke. But before that, prior to the Figueiredo loss, decision win over Mark De La Rosa in 2019. Got a submission victory over Espinosa in 2020. And then the summer of 2020, got a TKO stoppage victory with leg kicks over Jussier Formiga. So very impressive, run up to that Figueiredo fight. Been out for a while, right? So you can understand. The last fight is 2020. He's trying to get back in there, get a crack at the title. How much longer do you want to sit around? So took a fight with Pantoja, and we'll see what shakes out. Bantamweight division, very hot right now. A lot of action, a lot of significant matchups. If he can get an impressive win here and then make a quick turnaround, he could be right back in that picture where he's kind of getting fights in that top 4 to top 3 of the division. Pantoja, no joke though, so we'll see what happens there. Fight to keep your eye on if you're a fan of the lighter weight divisions, in this case bantamweight. So moving forward, back to the big boys. We got none other than one of my favorites out of H-Town, Derek the Black Beast Lewis. 26 wins, 9 losses, fan favorite. If he retired today, he would go down as one of the most beloved fighters, I think, ever to grace the UFC's octagon and outside of it as well at the press conferences. You never know what he's going to say. You never know what he's going to do when it comes to the fights. And that's part of what makes him, a must-watch fighter. Most recent outing was a KO, loss to Tai Tuivasa. It was tough. It was a bad KO, in terms of the damage that he took. But bouncing back here, coming back just a few months later, it's February, so he's had some time to recover. But pretty quick turnaround considering how poorly that fight ended for him. But before that, had a very impressive win over Chris Daukaus at the Lewis vs. Daukaus, main event there on December 18th of 2021. So he's been active, pretty much throughout his entire career. So that being said, it's not too much of a surprise that he's coming back, even though that most recent loss was pretty tough. But man, it's going to be a night of serious work for him going out against Sergey Pavlovich from Russia. Sergey, 1 loss on the record, 15 wins. And similar to those, Dagestanis, man, just guys from that, I should say guys and girls from that part of the world. The wrestling base, the Sambo base, it's so legit that it's tough to get one over on them because they know that if things aren't going too well for them on the feet, they can most likely, get it to the ground and then have the edge there in many fights. Coming off of a 3-fight win streak against Green, and Abdu Rakhimov in March of 2022 this year. KO victory, TKO victory, TKO victory. All 3 of those in the first round. So, to take out Green, Abdu Rakhimov most recently, again, all in the first round and all by knockout. Again, he certainly earned the fight with Lewis, but Lewis has his hands full. This is going to be a difficult fight for both men. I expect it to take place on the feet. And then, if things aren't maybe working out, again, for Pavlovich, look for him to maybe try to get a takedown. If it does hit the mat, Lewis, not known for his wrestling and his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, obviously, but definitely known to be able to get back to his feet, even with top echelon fighters in the heavyweight division. So kind of one of those fights where you look at it, you try to break it down, maybe make a pick, maybe you're making a bet here and there. is a difficult one to analyze, and that again is part of what makes it just really exciting for me. So yeah, very curious to see what happens there. And following Lewis's outing, it's the Assassin Baby, the former champ Brandon Moreno, and he's going to be taking on Kai Kara-France. Moreno with a 19-6-2 record, France with a 24-9-0 record. Both men in this division at flyweight, rather, making that push to be top dog because Figueiredo, he's kind of in limbo right now. We don't know when his return might be. With Moreno, obviously, if you follow the sport, you know that he's tangled with him and had his ups and downs. Had a draw with Figueiredo in 2020, had a win over Figueiredo in 2021, and then this year in January, lost to him by decision, although people have made the argument that he won that fight. And then with Kai Kara-France, somebody that's been climbing up the flyweight division, kind of just gradually taking step by step harder and harder fights. 3-fight win streak for Kai Kara-France over Rogerio Bontorin. That was a knockout win in 2021. TKO win over Cody Garbrandt 2021 as well to finish out the year in December there at the Oliveira Poirier fight. And then most recently, March of this year, just a few months ago at that Blades versus Dawkins card, Askar Askarov got a strong decision over him. So he's shown that he is somebody that might have that kickboxing background, but is really turned himself over the years into a very well-rounded fighter. So with Moreno, somebody that's been there at the top of the division and still is and is really vying to get back to champ status, Kai Kara-France, somebody that's thinking, hey, this is possible for me. Like, I could make this happen, and if I get a win over somebody like Moreno, there leaves no doubt that I'm the man to wear the belt here. So I don't know. What's your take on the co-main event? Do you think France gets it done against Moreno? Do you think Moreno still shows that, hey, I'm the man here at flyweight? Let me know. Leave a comment. Moving on, last fight of the evening, main event, right? Rematch between Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes. In terms of how this plays out, man, I just don't know, because it was such a shock ending to the previous matchup. Nunes stopped for the first time what seems like forever, and people understand that Pena, she's won a fair amount of fights over the years, but she had her child, she was inactive for a long time, came back into the fold and, took a fight and looked pretty good, but I don't know that anybody was banking on her taking out Amanda Nunes, particularly considering that it was early on in her return back to action, again, following the birth of her child. So, yeah, this is intriguing for a variety of reasons. One of them being that Nunes has been around for a long time at this point. 21-5 record. She's had a lot of fights. She's briefly hinted about retirement. Not that that would happen tomorrow, or even this year, but that it is something on her mind to an extent. And with Pena, she seems to be getting a second wind here in terms of her career arc. So are they on different trajectories? And, with Nunes thinking, how much time do I really want to spend still fighting these women, where Pena looks hungrier than ever? To me, that's more important factor than the skills, who has the edge in the clinch and, on the mat and everything. To me, this comes down to kind of a mental matchup, if you will. And that's not just my take on this. I mean, when you look at what Nunes and Pena are saying in the interviews, the media days, a lot of it has to do with mentality. Pena thinking that Nunes doesn't have it mentally, and even Nunes saying she wasn't, 100% there for the previous fight. Yeah, I think the body language come Saturday night will be intriguing, and how the fight shakes out, the result, that's one thing, but how does the winner win and how does the loser lose? Is it another stoppage victory for Pena? If so, I mean, that is pretty damning for Nunes, I think, in terms of continuing on at the top of the division. Maybe she still takes some more fights, but it may signal her time coming to an end as the champ. Does she move to a different weight class? I mean, I don't think so. What does Pena do? Does she want to fight her a third time if she gets another decisive victory? I wouldn't count on it. She's probably looking for a different, fresh opponent at that point. So, a lot of different layers to this, but it's more a fight that doesn't come down, again, to the skills and, boxing versus wrestling. That's not really the way that I've been kind of looking at this matchup. It's more of a, where are they at in their careers? Where are they at mentally? And again, same as I asked you guys with the co-main event, what do you think about this? Do you think that that's how this kind of distills down as well for the main event in the women's bantamweight division? Let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing your comments. So really, this rounds out the prelim preview, the main card preview, and I hope that everybody has a great time watching the fight Saturday night. Again, this is going down July 30th. Dallas, Texas, Saturday night, UFC 277 rematch between Pena and Nunes. Great co-main event, great main card, intriguing prelims as we talked about. And as a quick reminder too, if you want to support the podcast, you can do that through purchasing some beard oil. If you've got a bearded person in your life, you're bearded yourself, go ahead and head on over to gearheadbeard.com. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, look forward to your comments. I'm glad to be back. If you're listening on SoundCloud, thank you as well there. You can certainly leave a comment on that platform as well. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, feel free to do so. It's going to be at Grayitalo, GRAYITALO. And I'll look forward to catching you guys on the next one.